Hi guys, hope you're doing well. Today I'm back again with the next segment of Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest. In one of my previous sessions, I have already spoken to you about the introduction and the author's introduction and the summary of this particular prose. Everything I need to know I learned in the forest. And now we will continue with this and try and understand what exactly Vandana Shiva is talking about. So if you look at it, here her ecological journey, which started in the forest of the Himalaya, and my father was a forest conservator and my mother became a farmer after fleeing the tragic partition of India and Pakistan. So you need to understand that she comes from a background where there is already some kind of a stress, where during the partition time where they had to literally flee the partition, which means that when there was India and Pakistan partition, they had to choose between India and Pakistan, and they had to come towards India, and then they had to set all over again. So their life started from the scratch. So it is from the Himalayan forest and ecosystem that I learned most of what I know about ecology. The songs and the poems our mother composed for us were about trees, forest and India's forest civilizations. So here Vandana Shiva learns more about the forest with the help of her mother. So her mother tells her everything about the forest and the ecology. So it was all about the environment, it was all about the ecology. And this is an informative essay where Vandana Shiva tells how she learnt about all these environmentalism from the uneducated women of Garhwal, Himalaya. And as you know, her father was a forest conservator and her mother was a farmer. And she learned this Chipko Moment right there. And in the 1970s, the peasant women from her region had also come out in her support, and all women declared that they would hug the trees and loggers would have to kill them before killing the trees. So this was a situation under which she was growing up, and this was about women empowerment at that point in time, where women were so powerful that they would go against their husbands and men of the family in order to save the environment. So you should understand how beautifully the women have displayed their courage in order to save the environment. And you also see that there was also a folk song which read something like this: these beautiful oaks and rhododendrons, they give us cool water, don't cut these trees, we have to keep them alive. So how beautifully they have put that across. So they say these beautiful oaks, the oak trees, the big trees, and the rhododendrons, they give us cool water, the trees give cool water, don't cut them, because only if we don't cut them we can be alive with their lives, right? And then in 1973 she had gone to her favorite forest, and she went to swim in her favorite stream before leaving to Canada, where she did her PhD. But the forests were gone and the stream was reduced to a trickle. So the stream, which was huge and big, had only become a trickle, which means it had become a rivulet, which means a very, very small place where water can literally start trickling, can come through. So big rivers started drying up because of cutting off trees. So she decided to become the volunteer for the Chipko Moment, and she spent every vacation doing the Padayatras, that is the walking pilgrimage, where she was documenting deforestation and the work of the forest activist and spreading the message of Chipko, that is hugging of the trees. So that is what she kept doing. Then after that, she went on to tell the officials that they had come to teach them forestry. The women told the official that they had come to teach them forestry. Then from the Chipko Moment, she learned about biodiversity and she described the importance of biodiversity in her book, which is Monoculture of the Mind. So if you look at it here, she started talking about the monoculture of mind. I'm just trying to get this book I'm just adjusting it so that you can read it clearly. Yeah, and here again they produced if you look at the forest songs over here, you see that the women sang back in chorus and they kept saying, what do the forest bear? So soil, water and pure air. Soil, water and pure air sustain the earth and all she bears. So if you look at it, women, through their folk songs, through their acts of courage, they always tried to encourage, and also they try to tell everybody around, create awareness that forests are their lifelines. Right? So now coming to these monocultures, if you look at it, then after this, after this book, then it went on the lessons that she learned about diversity in the Himalayan forest and protection of biodiversity on the farms. Then about saving seeds from farmers' fields, and realized we needed a farm for demonstration and training. So they started a farm which is called the Navadhanya, which is started in the year 1994 in the Doon Valley. It is located in the lower elevation Himalayan region of Uttarakhand province. So this one, Navadhanya farm, it's all about conserving and growing. And they had about 630 varieties of rice. Can you imagine? That means different varieties, and these are all not the hybrid, they were all the original versions of the rice, which means that, they were not, they didn't have those kind of pesticides or insecticides, they were original. So that, along with 150 varieties of wheat and hundreds of other species, and they practiced and promoted biodiversity, intensive form of farming that produces more food and nutrition. That is a key word, per acre. So food with nutrition, and the conservation of biodiversity is therefore also the answer to the food and nutrition crisis. So whenever there is crisis about food and nutrition, the solution for it would be, to create healthy varieties of food, and also ensure that, there is enough nutrition that is there in each and every variety, in each and every grain that is created. Then Navadhanya, the movement for the biodiversity conservation and organic farming that she started in 1987, had spread to a large number of people, and there people had set up 100 community seed banks, and they had 3,000 rice varieties. Here there were 630, and now they had with this awareness they had created about 3,000 rice varieties, and this helped farmers make a transition from fossil fuel to chemical based fuel to biodiverse ecological system nourished by the sun and the soil, which is more what we call today the organic farming. Okay, that was there right in the 1987, which means it was already there about 40 years ago. So it is just that, we as you as youngsters should take it forward to see that, how such organic farming can be recreated and ensure that, there is a healthy flora and fauna. And biodiversity was a teacher of abundance and freedom. It was about abundance and freedom, of cooperation and mutual giving. All right. Moving on. What were the rights of, that was about biodiversity. Now moving on to the next one, which is about rights of nature on the global stage. So here if you look at it, nature has always been a teacher, and if you look at it, Ecuador it's one of the countries which has recognized the rights of nature in its constitution, which means that you can't be cutting trees just like that. You can't be destroying the soil. You can't be literally doing using insecticides or pesticides as to the whims and fancies, like the way it happens in some parts over here. It also happens in our country, where farmers are not educated about how much insecticide and pesticide has to be used per acre. All that they believe in is they wanted the vegetables they produce to be as clean as possible, because they can do their selling, they can get good profits. So they really don't care about the environment, the use of pesticides, how much it has to be used, all of that. They really don't care. So we need to really take that into consideration, that Ecuador had recognized this rights of nature in its constitution, and in April 2011, the United Nations General Assembly, inspired by the Constitution of Ecuador and the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, initiated by Bolivia, organized a conference on harmony with nature as part of Earth Day celebration. Much of the discussion centered on ways to transform systems based on domination of people over nature, men over women, and rich over poor, into new system based on partnership. So it's mutual partnership, where you're saying that it's a win-win situation, where people say that yes, you win, I win. We work in harmony with nature, so that we are able to nurture it, and at the same time we are leaving something for the future generations. And the UN General Secretary's report, Harmony with Nature, issued in conjunction with conference, elaborates on the importance of reconnecting with nature. Ultimately, environmentally destructive behavior is the result of a failure to recognize that human beings are an inseparable part of nature, and that we cannot damage it without severely damaging ourselves. So, do you see that how beautifully it is put, where they say that, and it makes a lot of sense. If we think that we are damaging the environment, we are damaging ourselves. So any harm to the nature means harming ourselves. So it would make sense to work in harmony. That is what is harmony with nature. So today we are talking about floods, we are talking about drought, we are talking about earthquake. A lot of these natural calamities are happening. Don't you think so? Somewhere it's because of these human activities, these natural disasters are occurring more. So it's a wake-up call for all of us, and we need to understand that yes, we need to save, we need to save trees, we need to conserve, we need to take care of our environment. Moving on. And then separatism is indeed at the root of disharmony. So how nicely it is put, disharmony. Separatism is keeping things separate, separating it, discrimination in other words, and violence against nature and people. And the prominent South African environmentalist Cormac Cullinan points out apartheid means separateness, isn't it? Apartheid means, that Gandhiji, he was, when he was in South Africa, he was a barrister, he was a lawyer. So when he went to South Africa, he he faced this apartheid, where he realizes that, there is such a discrimination between the blacks and whites. There is so much of violence against them. So this is exactly the same thing. So if we think that nature is inferior and we are superior, I think we have mistaken. So that is the reason the world joined the anti-apartheid movement to end the violent separation of people on the basis of color. So apartheid in South Africa was put behind us. Today we need to overcome the wider and deeper apartheid, that is the eco-apartheid, based on the illusion of separateness of humans from nature in our minds and lives. So we need to ensure that we are in sync with nature. So that is about the rights of nature on the global stage. Moving on, the dead earth worldview. What do you mean by the dead earth worldview? The war against the earth began with the idea of separateness, and its contemporary seeds were sown when the living earth was transformed into dead matter to facilitate the industrial revolution. Monocultures replaced diversity, Raw materials and dead matter replaced a vibrant earth. Terra nullius, the empty land ready for occupation regardless of the presence of indigenous peoples, replaced terra madre, mother earth. So it means that the idea behind this apartheid, separateness, it's all leading to something where we are talking about how do we create more of everything. So how do we create more products? How do we create more food? How do we create more luxuries? So that has led, so the dead earth worldview, so that has led to a lot of things which has changed so drastically that the empty land which is ready for occupation regardless of the presence of indigenous people is replaced mother earth. So the industrialization means what? Cutting off trees. Cutting off trees means what? Getting more factories, getting more industries, isn't it? So that again affected our environment so badly that even now we are not able to cope up with it, right? So we need to understand that. Then this philosophy goes back to Francis Bacon, called the father of modern science, who said that science and invention that result do not merely exert a gentle guidance over nature's course, they have the power to conquer and subdue her, to shake her to her foundations. So the philosophy says that Francis Bacon, he is also called the father of modern science. He said, science and invention that result do not merely exert a gentle guidance over nature's course, but they have the power to conquer and subdue her. So all our inventions, all our discoveries that we are doing, it should not come to a point, where we are destroying nature. So it should create that kind of a comfort zone where she is also, Mother Earth is also comfortable, and at the same time we're able to reap the benefits of whatever inventions we are making. And as philosopher and historian Carolyn Merchant points out, this shift of perspective from nature as a living, nurturing mother to inert, dead and manipulable matter was well suited to the activities that will lead to capitalism. The domination images created by Bacon and other leaders of the scientific revolution replaced those of the nurturing earth, removing a cultural constraint on the exploitation of nature. One does not readily slay a mother, dig into her entrails for gold, or mutilate her body, Merchant wrote. So, do you understand that, this is a word that we have to understand? Capitalism. What is this capitalism? Capitalism is all about business. Okay, it's about business where it's about profit, it's about making money. So everybody, why do we cut trees? We cut trees to make factories or industries. We cut trees to sell it. We cut trees to make furniture. We cut trees to make paper. So do you see that, what is happening end of the day? So end of the day, human beings are only concentrating on this money making business, the money spinning business. So what happens is here, these domination images created by Bacon and other leaders of scientific revolution replace those of the nurturing earth, removing a cultural constraint on the exploitation of nature, right? And one does not readily slay a mother, isn't it? So how nicely they put it. They say that you don't have to kill her just like that and dig into her entrails for gold or mutilate her body. So what we are doing is we are literally, exploiting her to the core, Mother Earth to the core. So it's it's telling you that yes, we need to do something about it before it is too late. And that's that segment. And moving to the next one, which is what nature teaches. So when you look at what nature teaches, what it happens today, at a time of multiple crises intensified by globalization, we need to move away from the paradigm of nature as dead matter, and we need to move to an ecological paradigm. And for this, the best teacher is nature itself. So we cannot consider nature as something which is dead. Or we cannot treat it like, as if it is non-existent, as if it is inanimate. We need to move to this where you have to look at it as an ecological paradigm, which means that, it has to be sustainable, it is alive, and it is something that we need to respect. And what is the Earth University? It's a concept which is the Earth University. Where, what is Earth University? Which means the place that we are studying, the nature that is teaching us, nature which is nurturing us, which is taking care of us. So it's an education that we get from there. So the Earth University teaches Earth democracy. So as you know, democracy is by the people, for the people, of the people. So which is the freedom for all species to evolve within the web of life. Which means that, we do not have rights to kill them left, right, and center. Every living being, every creature has its right to live in the web of life, in the network of life, and the freedom and responsibility of human as members of the Earth family to recognize, the key word is to recognize them, to protect them, to respect the rights of other species. So Earth democracy is a shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. So we don't have to constantly say that human beings are the only ones, who has to be the center of attraction and be in the lap of Mother Earth. It is ecocentrism. That means that, we need to understand we have to give importance to nature. And since we all depend on the earth, earth democracy translates into human rights to food and water, to freedom from hunger and thirst. End of the day, what do people require? So in Hindi, it's a very famous thing. We need roti, makan and kapda, right? So which means first is food, then it is your house, then it is clothing, right? So we need to first take care of this hunger. So if this is taken care, the hunger and thirst which we get from Mother Earth, then the rest all follows. So we should not be greedy. We only need to work for the need, not for the greed. Gandhiji absolutely said that. Absolutely, he had put it across, about 5 decades ago. So we need to understand Mother Nature can take care of our needs, not our greeds. And because the Earth University is located at Navadhanya, a biodiversity farm, participants learn to work with living seeds, living soil and web of life. See, do you see that? They consider that to be living seeds because that is the one which gives birth to the saplings and the trees. Living soil. Soil is, though, soil is supposed to be a biotic factor, but then, that's the one which is the foundation. That's the one which gives rise to the living, to the trees. And in this web of life, it is great to understand that we have to work in synchronization. And these participants are, who are the people in the Earth University? The participants include farmers, school children, people from across the world, and 2 of our most popular courses are A to Z of organic farming and agroecology, and Gandhi and globalization. So it's important to understand that, yes, these are the people. Who are the people who are working here? The people are farmers, school children, and people from across the world who wanted to create that change and ensure that, we save the environment. Now, moving on to the poetry of the forest. So, what is poetry of the forest? The Earth University is inspired by Rabindranath Tagore, India's national poet and a Nobel Prize laureate. And Tagore started a learning center in Shantiniketan in West Bengal, India, as a forest school, both to take inspiration from nature and to create an Indian cultural renaissance. The school became a university in 1921, growing into one of India's most famous centers of learning. So, this Earth University was inspired by Rabindranath Tagore, India's national poet. We know who is Rabindranath Tagore, and he is also a Nobel Prize laureate. And in Shantiniketan, that is in West Bengal, he created a forest school, and wherein it was to take inspiration from nature, to learn everything from nature, to have all the practicals from nature, and also to understand the Indian culture. And the school became a university in the year 1921, growing into one of India's most famous learning centers. And then today, just as in Tagore's time, we need to turn to nature and understand forest for lessons in freedom. So every living creature has its right to live. So that freedom has to be given to the nature, to all the living beings, including the most important being the trees. And he has written an essay, Tapovan, the Forest of Purity, where Tagore writes, Indian civilization has been distinctive in locating its source of regeneration, material and intellectual, in the forest, not in the city. So, the civilization has been distinctive in locating its source of regeneration, material and intellectual, in the forest, not in the city. So, the real talent you find are in the forest. The real wealth that you find are in the forest, not in the city. And India's best ideas have come where man was in communion with trees and rivers and lakes, away from the crowds. So not in the competitive world, not in a world where there is so much of hustle and bustle, but in the tranquility of the forest, wherein there's communion with trees and rivers and lakes, away from the crowds. So from there, the real skills, the real talent, the real intellectual wealth has come. The culture of forest has fueled the culture of Indian society. The culture that has arisen from the forest has been influenced by diverse processes of renewal of life, which are always at play in the forest, varying from species to species, from season to season, in sight and sound and smell. The unifying principle of life in diversity of democratic pluralism thus became the principle of Indian civilization. So, if you look at it, the culture that has arisen from the forest has been influenced by diverse processes of renewal of life, which are always at play in the forest. So if you see that, in the forest you find different kind of species. You find the wild, you find the domestic, you find arboreal, you find something in the tree, you find something, the burrowing animals, you find the crawling animals, every kind of, so there is diversity. So it's just to tell you that this diversity that you see and the varying, it varies from species to species, from season to season, and in sight, sound and smell, they are all so different. And the unifying principle, the one that is united, the one that is bringing together of life is in diversity, is the democratic pluralism, which means that despite being plural, despite being different, despite being diverse, there is also unification, which means they all live in harmony. Thus, it is the principle of Indian civilization. Indian civilization mainly is on the principle of unity in diversity. So, though we from north to south, from east to west, there are hundreds of cultures. Despite that, there is unity in our country. So that is the principle of our civilization. And it is this unity in diversity that is the basis of both ecological sustainability and democracy. So, ecological sustainability is ability to sustain, ability to be there, ability to move forward, ability to balance. And diversity without unity becomes the source of conflict and contest. So, if there is no unity, then what happens? Conflicts and contests. Conflicts, fights, contests. Yes, there is unnecessary competition that goes around. And unity without diversity becomes the ground for external control. So, the key word over here is, yes, we need unity in diversity. And this is true of both nature and culture. The forest is a unity in its diversity, and we are united with nature through our relationship with the forest. So everything we do, we need to ensure that we take care of our forest, we take care of our trees, we take care of our animals. And in Tagore's writings, the forest was not just a source of knowledge and freedom, it was a source of beauty and joy. So, when you are in sync with nature, you would love to be in the lap of nature. Who doesn't like? Today, if you look at the life that people are living in all the metros, and let's take an example of Bangalore. Today, half the people are getting burnt out. Why? Because they spend 4 to 5 hours just on the roads traveling, for their bread and butter. All that they have to do is about 5 hours of waste of time on the road, which means they're traveling, let's say, from point A to B, which is just about 10 kilometers. They travel about 1 hour. Yes. And I'm sure you know the famous example of Silk Board and Electronic City. It is believed that, probably you can sleep there, you can, the traffic junction and the traffic bottlenecks are so bad that people can literally have a nap over there, and they wake up and they'll still see that, the traffic is not cleared, the congestion is not cleared. So that is something which is the result of our, let's say, the price that we have to pay for all the progress that we have made so far. So, where I was telling, that is what I was telling you, that, yes, we have forgotten to enjoy the forest. We have forgotten to enjoy the beauty. So nature is so beautiful. And now it's becoming the role reversal. Earlier, everybody wanted to go to the cities and start earning and living a very sophisticated life. But now, a lot of people are returning to their roots. They're coming back to the villages. They're coming back to places which are rural, and they're doing farming and agriculture, which is a good news in itself. So that's why this is very beautiful, and it gives you so much of joy to be in nature and the art and aesthetics of harmony and perfection. And this symbolizes the universe. The forest teaches also the union and compassion. Compassion is the love. It is just to understand. All right? Then next is, the forest also teaches us enoughness. So not greed. It's saying enough. Yes. This is more than enough. That's what you're saying. And as a principle of equity, how to enjoy the gifts of nature without exploitation and accumulation. So what is happening? Both exploitation and accumulation, it happens. So which are bad. So one is exploiting the trees, exploiting everything that is there in nature, making, completely trying to extract everything that is there, and at the same time accumulation is, today I keep it for, let us just talk about the example of onions. Onion is always a vegetable which has always made us cry, isn't it? Onion at 100 rupees per kilo, I'm sure the common man will not be able to afford. What happens is, these middlemen, the agents, what they do is they accumulate all these sacks of onions, quintals of onions in their godowns, and they wait for the right price. And then when the price, they would have bought it at 10 rupees per kilo. But then, they would wait for a price hike, and then when there is a price of, and the markets are really bad and there is a demand for onions, they then remove it from their godowns and they sell it at 60 or 70 or 80, and at the end of the day, the public, they end up paying more like $100 per kilo. So that is the exploitation and accumulation which happens, so which are both bad. And Tagore quotes from the ancient text written in the forest, "Know all that moves in the moving world as enveloped by God." So know all that moves in the moving world as enveloped by God. So God has created everything for us. So try and understand what is that which is moving, and find enjoyment through renunciation, not greed of possession. Okay, so enjoyment through renunciation, sacrifice, give it up. Everything is not about, keeping it for yourself. Start living for other things or others, not through greed of possession. No species in a forest appropriates the share of another species. So no species in a forest appropriate the share of others. See, in the forest, it is just they live so that, they eat other animals, they kill other animals for their survival, not for any kind of greed. So the species, that is the human beings, the Homo sapiens, are the only species which lives on greed. So, no species in a forest appropriates the share of another species. They don't really, greedily start eating up everything that is there, or they don't try to grab or snatch everything that the other species has. And every species sustains itself in cooperation with others. There is a sense of cooperation. The tiger will eat a deer only if it is hungry. Otherwise, it would just let it be the way it is. So, as simple as that. And the end of consumerism and accumulation is the beginning of the joy of living. So it has to end. So today, buy one, get one free, buy two, get four free. So all that consumerism and accumulation that we are talking about. Earlier, I'm sure you all know the story. Earlier, if there is a family of 4, you would buy, let's say, 2 or 3 soaps per month. Example. But today, you see that you go buy Himalaya soap. You see that, you buy 3, you get 3 free. So the point is, people are so much attracted by all this consumerism and also these offers that are there that we end up accumulating everything every month. So what is happening is, there is no end to our needs. That is happening, and the mall culture, that is also really trying to make us buy more than what is required. Earlier we would just buy what was required, but now we are accumulating. Just think about it. Just go check in your storeroom, go check what all you have in your kitchen. We definitely, all of us, me included, we have more than what we could ask for. We have this consumerism where, we try and accumulate everything that we could think of. So, end of the day, we are creating a deep hole in the pockets. And who's getting the benefit of it? The capitalist. So who are the capitalists? They are the business people, isn't it? So that is something that we need to think about, and it's a wake-up call for all of us that, buy only what is required. So that there is no need to really, start putting everything in, start storing everything that you don't require. And it could be the same thing with cell phones. It could be the same thing with the groceries. It could be the same thing with the snacks, or it could be anything. We should just stop this attitude of accumulating things. So the end of consumerism and accumulation is the beginning of joy of living. Because at the end of the day, what do you need? You need peace and happiness, right? So the conflict between greed and compassion. So there's a conflict between greed and compassion, conquest and cooperation, violence and harmony that Tagore wrote about continues today. And so well said, Tagore, for no reason. You should understand the depth in which Tagore has written and said this about 100 years ago. And it is valid even today. It's making sense more now. So the conflict, the fight between greed and compassion. So between greed and compassion, let's choose compassion. Conquest and cooperation, trying to grab everything, that and cooperation, let's choose the cooperation. Violence and harmony, anytime harmony, isn't it? Nobody can be peaceful with violence, or nobody can be happy with violence. That Tagore wrote about continues today. and it is the forest that can show us the way beyond this conflict. So we have to work towards this conservation, and we need to ensure that we live in harmony with our Mother Earth. Only then we can have more of happiness, joy, and peace. So that is about our Vandana Shiva's Everything I Learned in the Forest essay, this informative essay. And I hope it is clear. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. And I will ensure that, if you need any doubts, if you have any doubts, you can always get back to me so that I can help you. And please ensure that you read these glossaries, all these glossaries that are here. You need to ensure, and you need to read them clearly so that the lessons become crystal clear. And you'll be able to write answers based on this chapter. So thank you so much for listening, and you all have a nice day.